You've got all the teams of the students? Abhinav, teams ban gayi? अभिनव
मैम टीम्स कौन सी?
आप लोग ने अपने ग्रुप्स नहीं बनाए हैं?
नहीं मैम, आज तो लास्ट डेट है उसका एड ड्रॉप का।
अच्छा ओके, सो यू वांट टू वेट टिल देन?
यस मैम।
ओके फाइन ठीक है। And Samriddhi, we don't have the final list right now, no? We'll have the final list only on 20th.
Yes, ma'am.
ठीक है. Okay, so without wasting much time, let's get started. So welcome dear students, the others can keep joining in. We had started off with the basis of different forms of business organizations, and we had discussed some aspects with regard to IPOs and shares and forfeitures and so on. I hope that was clear to everyone. Is there any doubt, any question that anyone has before we move on? And if you see your team's page, I have also uploaded a lot of material, and in that you will find a base material that I used in MSL 302, where I used to teach financial accounting and management accounting. So there, for people who have not done MSL 307, and for everyone also, please go through that. It teaches you about the basics of all the three financial statements: profit and loss account, balance sheet, and your cash flow statements. Okay, so we'll do that in class as well, but that is the base material that you can refer to also. Okay, so any doubts, any questions so far? Okay, good. So if there are no questions, then I would like to move on with a couple of more PPTs that talk about the accounting principles and also the basis of P&L and balance sheet and so on. So we can then carry forward. Just a second. So I'm going to share my screen. From here, I think I can show. Just a second. Okay, and since I will be looking at the PPT when I'm talking, so in case anyone has any doubts, any questions, please unmute yourself and please ask. Okay, you can write it in the chat box. And Samriddhi, in case there's any question in the chat box, please let me know.
Sure, ma'am.
Thank you. So the legal definition, which has been given quite beautifully by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, is that accounting is the art of recording, classifying, and summarizing in a significant manner, and in terms of money, transactions and events which are in part at least of financial character, and interpreting the result thereof. Basically what they have done is all the steps of accounting they have tried to capture through this particular definition. Okay, now does anyone know which is the body that governs all the accountants and the kind of accounting practices that we use in India? Can anyone guess? Anyone? Does anyone have friends or relatives who are chartered accountants?
ICAI.
ICAI, very good. Can you tell me the full form of this?
Institute of Chartered Accountants of India.
Very good, very good. Who's this? Divya?
I'm Divya.
Yes.
I'm Divya.
Yes, very good, Divya. Very good. I'm proud of you. Divya, how did you know this? Do you have some relative who's a chartered accountant?
My father is a chartered accountant.
Oh, excellent, excellent. So Divya is absolutely right. The Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, which not only registers the practicing CAs in the country, it is also the body that governs the accounting practices that we use in India. Okay, and the similar body in the US is the Institute of Certified Public Accountants, okay, the ICPA. And the equivalent of CAs there is the CPAs. So every country has its own regulatory body that supervises and governs the accounting practices that are used in the country, and they come up with any modifications or revisions from time to time. Okay, so very good, Divya. That is very good general knowledge. Okay. Now in accounting, you know that accounting is known as the language of a business. Every business is going through its own operations, making its own products and services, but we need a uniform language that can translate what the business is doing to all its stakeholders. Okay, and accounting becomes that uniform language. Now, as all of you know, as engineers, if you learn a programming language, it has a specific syntax. Okay, and every word has its own meaning. Similarly is the case with your accounting also. Okay, so it has a specific syntax, and every word will have a particular meaning. Yes, is someone asking a question? Someone has unmuted themselves. Rupesh, is it you? Rupesh? Okay, fine. I don't think anyone has a question. Now, so what they do is every transaction that happens in a business, okay, and you can imagine every day there are millions of transactions happening in a large business. So every time a transaction takes place, which is of a financial nature. So, for example, someone buys something, someone sells something, someone pays salary, someone buys furniture, someone makes a sale, someone has incurred a cost. Everything, every time that happens, whether it is of 1 paisa, 1 rupee, it is recorded. Okay, and this process of recording each and every transaction that happens on a daily basis in a company is called a journal. Okay, so the book that you create in this is called a journal. It is from the French word jour, which means a day. So JOURNAL, journal. Now, if you would have seen old Hindi movies, you would have seen, sahukars, people sitting with a huge register and calling it the Bahi Khata. That is the Hindi word for a journal. Okay. So basically, in a big register, they used to write down the date, and every transaction that used to happen used to be recorded. The same thing happens in any company as well, except that instead of now holding hard copies of very large Bahi Khatas, we have softwares like Tally, which help you record each and every transaction virtually. Okay. Then the second step is, naturally, because there are so many transactions happening, if someone has to make sense, and going through the register may become very difficult. So they try and classify each of these transactions under specific heads, which become easier to understand. So they create specific accounts called salaries, furniture, revenue, selling cost, taxes, interest, whatever you may call it. They club it under specific heads, which are also called ledgers. Okay, ledgers. So when you open a bank account and the bank gives you a passbook, that is your ledger in the books of the bank. So every transaction that the bank makes with you and vice versa gets recorded in that ledger, okay, which is your passbook. So that's the second step. The third is every company, as I told you, follows a financial period, financial year. In India, it is 1st of April to 31st of March. So all the transactions that are recorded in each ledger through the year, or whenever you're reporting, you can even report monthly or quarterly and so on, is the total is carried, and that is taken to another account which is called trial balance. Okay, so trial balance is nothing but at the end of a period, the closing balance of each ledger in the books of the company. Okay, and from the trial balance we make the two final accounts, which are public documents, called the profit and loss account and the balance sheet. Now, profit and loss account is basically the income statement of a company. So all the income that the company makes, and how will the company make an income? by selling its product and services. So all the sales revenue that the company makes, less all the costs that it incurs to make that sale. Okay. So सबसे पहले cost that we remove is called the cost of goods sold, which is the direct cost of making that particular product or service. So suppose a company is an automobile manufacturer, then the cost that is incurred in making the car, actually making the car, is called the direct cost or cost of goods sold. Okay. So from sales, they first take out the COGS and then they come to the figure called gross profit. That this is a gross profit that is coming out of my simply making that product and selling it. Okay. Of course, we will do all of this in detail. I'm just telling you the step-by-step items that go into the P&L. Now, from this gross profit, the company may have incurred a lot of admin expenses. Admin expenses means stationery, office expenses, lighting, rent, salaries for your managers, finance manager, HR manager, and so on. Okay, office staff. So all the expenses that are there to run your administration, that are included in administrative expenses. Okay, so even that is reduced. Then the company may have incurred selling and distribution expenses to sell your product. So marketing, advertising, commission that you pay to your sales force. Okay. Any kind of transportation charges that you've incurred in selling your products, anything related to selling and distribution is also a part of selling and distribution expenses, and that is also reduced. So from the gross profit, when we take out the admin expenses and the selling and distribution expenses, we find what is called operating profit of the company. Okay. It is also called earnings before interest and taxes. Okay. So this is basically all your operational expenses, that is to run your operations. What are the expenses you have incurred? You take this out and then you get what is called EBIT or operating profit. Okay. Now, students, has anyone heard of the word depreciation? I'm sure a lot of you would have heard. Divya also definitely must have heard. Can anyone tell me what depreciation means? What you understand by this word?
Hello,
Yes,
ma'am.
Dinesh. Yes, Dinesh.
Ma'am, depreciation is a decrease in value of something.
Very good, very good. Excellent, Dinesh. You're bang on. Now, what happens is, Dinesh and the rest of you, when a company buys a large asset like a large plant or machinery or equipment or furniture, which it is buying for many, many years to use in the production of their products or services, it requires a lot of money. Okay. Aman, do you have a question? You unmuted yourself. Aman?
No, ma'am. I was just joined, so I guess it was unmuted by default.
Oh, okay, 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 fine. So, so what the government does is to encourage companies to take such modernization up, to buy more plant and machinery to expand their operations. The government gives an accounting treatment, okay, to these companies, and it says, suppose you have bought a huge machine for 10,000 rupees. So what you do is, over the economic life of the machine, we'll fix the economic life of the machine in the beginning. And over the life of the machine, you can keep writing off some part of that machine every year as an operating expense. Okay. So what will happen is that by showing it as an expense, you will actually reduce your earnings before taxes. So the tax burden that will be levied on you, or the tax that you will pay, will be much lower than if we would have not allowed you to charge depreciation. But it is just an accounting treatment. As depreciation, the company is not actually paying cash to anyone. Okay. It is just an accounting treatment to basically write off that machine through the economic life of that machine and getting an advantage out of it. Okay. So this is how depreciation is treated in the books of the account. Now there are two ways. Divya would know better. Her father would tell her there are two ways of calculating depreciation. One is called the straight line method. Suppose a machine is worth 10,000 and it has a life of 5 years. then basically you just divide it by its economic useful life and keep writing off 2000 every year. So that in 5 years time, the machine is completely written off. But that is not the method that Indian companies follow. Indian companies follow the written down value method. Okay. So basically what the Income Tax Act of 1961 does is, that is the act that governs the tax practices of our country. It lays down specific percentages for different asset classes. So for certain buildings, it is different, cars, it is different, furniture, it is different, computers, it is different, and so on. And that percentage class is the value that gets written off every year. So suppose the percentage is 20 for a machine, and the machine has a starting value of 10,000. Then in the first year, 20% of that will be written off. Okay, so then becomes 2000, that will be written off as depreciation, and the written down value at the end of that year becomes 10,000 minus 2000, that is 8,000. So now in the second year, 20% will be levied on the written down value of 8,000. Okay, so now 1600 will be charged as depreciation for the second year, and the remaining 6400 will become the written down value at the end of the second year. So this way, so naturally the value of the asset never becomes zero, but it moves very close to zero. Okay, so that is called the written down value method. And if you ever do an MBA in finance, or you do more specialized courses, then you would understand about the block of assets concept that Income Tax Act levies. But right now, I don't think you need to worry about that at this level. Okay. So this is the method that Indian companies use. That is for your information. But at this level, because you're undergrad students, in numericals and all, we'll give you straight line depreciation typically, so that it becomes easier for you to calculate. Okay. So depreciation is also included as an operating expense when we are arriving at our operating profit, or EBIT, which is earnings before interest and taxes. Okay. Now, all of you know that companies may take loans to finance their business, but taking a loan is basically a financing decision. How am I going to finance my business? Should I finance it through equity or loan? So it's a financing decision. You can have your operations without loans also. You can be 100% equity financed, or you can have your operations with some equity, some loan as well. So it's a financing decision. It has nothing to do with your operations directly. Okay. But again, because the government wants to encourage companies to take more loans, because it wants its own financial system to do well. Okay, because every economy, as I told you, remember, it has different sections, and the financial system becomes the conduit for the flow of money amongst different sections. So because the government wants to encourage the financial institutions as well, the government allows companies who have taken loans and are paying interest to charge interest also as a tax deductible expenditure. Okay, and thereby, because they are taking interest also as a tax deductible expenditure, then again their tax levied falls by the tune of the interest that they are paying. So from the operating profit, we reduce interest charges, if any. Okay, and then we get what is called earnings before taxes, or EBT, or profit before taxes. From this, of course, whatever is the figure, on this the income tax on companies is levied. Initially, if you've been reading financial newspapers, you will know that the income tax levied on companies was close to 33 to 35%. Okay, but now it has been significantly brought down, and now the consolidated tax after all the cesses and duties comes to around 25%. Okay, so from this figure, you take out the taxes that are levied, and you get what is called earnings after taxes, or net profit. Okay, this is also called EAT. Now, this is the money that is left to the owners of a business after paying off each and every cost, after paying off all the interest expenses that you are supposed to pay to loan providers, after paying off all the taxes that you're supposed to pay to the government. This is the net amount that is left, which only belongs to the shareholders, the owners of a business. Okay, and this is what you keep hearing about. Net profit of the company is so much, net profit is so much. Okay, so any doubts, any questions so far? ये हम बहुत ही step by step I'm telling you the main things followed in a P&L account. Okay, now can anyone tell me that this net profit that the company has made, whose money is this? Whose money is this? I just told you actually, but can you repeat it? Is it the company's money? Whose money is it? Can anyone tell me? Let's see how much you recall from the previous class. Anyone? Acha, can anyone tell me whether this net profit is an asset for the company or a liability for the company? Chalo, guess karo, it can only be one of the two. Divya, would you like to take a guess?
Asset.
Why
It's
do you say it's an asset, Divya? Why do you say it's an asset?
because liabilities are like they are not they are the things that you own.
Are they the things that you own or are they the things that you owe? The company owes to someone.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, that's what I meant.
Right. So is the profit owed by the company to someone?
No.
No.
That
Whose
profit
money
is for
is
you
it?
to keep.
For
That,
you, matlab,
that
you is the company.
like yes, the whoever owns the company.
Yes.
Like
So Divya, if you remember in the last class, I had told you that once the company gets registered, it becomes a separate legal entity, separate from its owners, separate from the people who promoted it, separate from its shareholders. So if you have promoted a company Divya, then the moment it gets registered, suppose you call your company Divya Private Limited, then the moment it gets registered, it becomes a separate legal entity and you as its promoter are a separate legal entity. So Divya can sue Divya Private Limited and Divya Private Limited similarly can sue Divya in a court of law. Okay, so they're two different people. And the company is like a slave. All of you would have seen, if you remember old classics of the early 19th century, if you have heard about apartheid and so on, and you're hearing about, continuous racism in the US, we had a concept of slaves. Okay, and basically it was that slaves would do everything. Okay, they would work, they would plow the fields, everything, but whatever they make, nothing belongs to them, everything belongs to the owners. Okay, so the company is also like a slave in the hands of its owners. कंपनी सब काम करती है, कंपनी एसेट्स खरीदती है, उसे प्रोडक्ट बनाती है, बेचती है, एक्सपेंसेस बेयर करती है, इंटरेस्ट पे करती है, लोन लेती है, व्हाटएवर. But every money, every rupee in the end that the company makes belongs to the owners, the shareholders. Okay, so the company owes this money back to the shareholders. Fine. Now what happens is, I had also told you that company is an artificial person in the eyes of law. Naturally company कोई असली इंसान तो है नहीं कि the company will be able to take a decision. So who takes decisions on behalf of the company? The owners do. And if you remember, I told you, just like you have your own CRs, similarly the owners or shareholders also elect their own representatives who are called directors, and these directors together constitute the board of the company, and they are the ones who basically guide what the company will do. Okay, so if the company is a ship, then they become the captains of the ship and they steer the course that the ship will take. Okay, and if you remember in the last class, I had also told you that because these directors may not have the time or the inclination or even the expertise to run the company professionally, they hire what is called the management of a company. So the CEO, CTO, CFO, CIOs, all of these people are basically professionals like you who are hired from the top institutions of the country like IITs, IIMs or abroad, and they have domain expertise in what the company is wanting to go ahead in. So that board hires these top level executives and then they hire their teams so that they can run the company on behalf of the board. Remember, we had done all the principal agent conflicts and all that. We had done that, remember? Anyone who remembers? किसी को याद ही नहीं है, पता नहीं सबने शुरू से क्लास भी किया है कि नहीं. So anyway, so now when the company has made the net profit, who will decide what to do with that net profit? The owners will. So basically what the owners do is they call another board meeting where the chief financial officer who's preparing all the accounts of the companies, he presents the accounts to the board and he says ki this was our sales revenue. From this we took out the direct costs of making a product, that's COGS, cost of goods sold. Then we had our gross profit, then we took out admin expenses and selling and distribution depreciation. Then we got operating profit, from this we took out interest. Then we got profit before tax, from this we took out the tax, and now this is the net profit that we have. Now what do you want to do with it? Okay. Suppose the shareholders decide, and all of this is done by voting and the majority wins. Suppose the shareholders decide that, listen, this is our money and we want it because we want to, buy things from it or invest it or whatever. So the company will then declare what is called a dividend. You must have heard of this word, dividend, okay, which is the share in income of the company for its shareholders. So suppose there is 1000 rupees net profit and the shareholders say that we want all the money in the form of dividends, and there are 100 shares. So that 1000 gets divided equally amongst the 100 shares and the company writes a check for dividend payment to each shareholder and it sends to them, okay, or it credits their bank account, and that is how the money goes. Okay, so now the company has no net profit left with them, and so that's okay. Okay, but more often than not, when the company is growing, the shareholders may decide that, listen, the company is doing very well, so we want to reinvest our earnings back into the business. Let us buy some more machines, let us set up another factory, let us expand into newer markets and so on. So we want the company to reuse our money and build more assets, and then in the future we hope that we will get more money out of this investment. So then the company invests all of the net profit back into the business, and this is called retentions or retained profit. Okay, this money is also the shareholders' money only, right? Because it belongs to the shareholders. So it gets added as reserves and surplus to the actual share capital that the shareholders had provided initially. Okay, so this also becomes, so the profit is also a liability of the company, especially if it retains it. Okay. Now, naturally, if the company is taking it to the liability side, it will hold this profit in some form, right? Either it will hold it in hard cash or it will hold it in the bank. Okay, whichever form it is holding that liability in, that asset will increase on the asset side. So again, your balance sheet total will always tally. Okay, so I hope, is this concept clear to everyone? So first the P&L is made. From that the net profit figure is ascertained. Then we create an intermediary account which is called profit and loss appropriation account, where the company decides, the shareholders basically decide what to do with the net profit. Should we give it all as dividends? Should we retain it into the business? If we retain it, in what form should we retain it? Should we create a loan redemption reserve, which is basically a reserve that is created to repay your loan? Okay, should we create a machinery replacement reserve, which is a reserve that you create to replace your existing machinery? Should we create a dividend equalization reserve that the company pays out dividends, but in some years where the earnings fall, then we can use money from this dividend equalization reserve to pay dividends? Okay, company may also, or the owners may also decide to split the net profit. They may decide to give something away as dividend to themselves and retain the rest. So this can always be a ratio. Okay, And then whatever is retained is carried to the balance sheet of the company. Okay? Then we create the balance sheet where we have all the liabilities of the company and all the assets of the company. So the balance sheet becomes the final financial position of a company. The P&L is called an account because it is the list of transactions over the year. So suppose the entire year, how much sales did I make? The entire year, what were my costs? And balance sheet becomes a snapshot of that company on that particular day. Okay. And that is why if you see the balance sheet of any company, you will see that it's made on a particular day. So if you consider the business as a flowing river, then the balance sheet is just a picture that you take of that flowing river. Okay, at that point of time, the minute that picture is clicked, there are so many transactions still happening which get recorded. Okay, so any doubts, any questions so far? Okay, so let me go back to the PPT. So basically this definition carries forward all of these steps that I told you, the journal, the creation of ledgers, then the trial balance, and finally posting it in your final accounts, which are called profit and loss account and balance sheet. And then of course, this is used to interpret the financial position of the company. Okay, every company does this. Now, there are various terms that are used in accounting parlance: concepts, conventions, bases, and policies. Concepts are like the basic theories on which the accounting practice is based. Okay. And conventions are the practices. Okay. How do we implement this particular theory or concept is then called a convention. So concepts remain universal across the world. The conventions may change depending on the accounting standards that the countries follow, but typically conventions are also pretty much the same across the world. The reason why it is so is because, as I told you, accounting is the language of a business, and these days in a global world, every country is doing business with everyone else. So they want the conventions also to be uniform, so that if I'm reading the balance sheet of a US company and if I'm reading the balance sheet of a Turkish company, it means the same thing and I can understand what they are doing. Okay, the comparison becomes so much easier. Now let us look at some of the most important concepts. Okay, and see, in your exams, we would never ask you direct questions, but we may give you a situation and ask you which kind of a concept is behind this situation. Okay, so it can be more applied. So try and understand it in its entirety. Okay, just a second. Let me have a sip of water. So Samriddhi, do you see any questions in the chat box? Okay, Samriddhi, fine. Everyone is understanding, that means it's good. Okay, Samriddhi, I think you lost your connection, but now you're back, so that's good. Okay. Now the first is called the business entity concept, which I've already told you when I was giving you the definition of a company. The moment a company gets registered, it becomes a separate legal entity in the eyes of law, separate from its owners. So if the owners of the business are giving it even 1 rupee, the business treats it as a liability. It has to pay this 1 rupee back to its owners. Okay. The second concept, money measurement concept. Money becomes the common denominator of measurement. So for example, company may be buying 5 tons of steel, okay, 1,000 bags of cement. We cannot write it in that sense, in the pure sense. We have to convert everything into money forms so that it becomes a common denominator for each and every transaction. And that is why if you have any transaction that cannot have a money measurement associated with it, we will not record it in our transactions. Okay, so for example, a company has a very, very popular CEO and the CEO resigns. Okay, now financially, if you see, it will have a huge impact on the business. Okay, but because there is no direct monetary measurement associated with his leaving, we cannot record this transaction. Okay, or some very old promoter of the company who had started the company dies. Okay, so the entire company is in a big shock and they're feeling very upset, but since it has no direct measurement in terms of money, that action, we cannot record it. Only transactions that can be readily denoted in terms of money are recorded. Okay, so the money measurement concept. Then the third is going concern concept. This also I had told you in the definition. Once a company gets registered, it is supposed to have perpetual succession. That is, it will continue to exist forever. It does not matter if the owners die, does not matter if anyone else dies, the company legally will continue to exist forever. Law has created it, and the only way it can die is by an act of law. And that act of law is triggered when a company defaults on a fixed financial obligation. Okay, that is when the people who were at the other end of that fixed financial obligation sue the company, and bankruptcy procedures are initiated against it. Only then again law will take over and then sell off the assets of the company to pay off all the people who it owes money to, and then finally at the end nothing will be left and the company will legally die. Okay, otherwise the company will continue to exist forever, and that is why you never find that the books of the company get closed. Okay, it is only for accounting periods that we say, okay, we have closed the books for the account for the company for this accounting period, but basically the transactions continue to go, okay, forever. Then you have the accounting period concept. This is a predetermined periodicity, generally a year. And as we discussed in the last class, different countries have different accounting periods that they calculate the transactions for. Okay. Then we have another very important concept called cost concept. Whenever we show anything on the balance sheet, whether it is the assets or the liabilities, it is always at the cost basis. That is, what was the cost that was incurred when you were buying that asset or when you were creating that liability. So for example, if a company bought land 10 years ago at 5 lakh rupees, then that will be the value of that land in the books of the company. It doesn't matter that after 10 years, the value of that land is now 1 crore. We will still show it at the actual cost that the company had borne when it came into the books of the company. Okay, so cost concept, very, very important. Any doubts, any questions so far? Okay, then the other concept is called the realization concept. Okay, revenue should be recognized when it is earned. So for example, if a company is making a sale and the customer says that, okay, I'm buying this product, but I will pay you in 1 week. Okay, so the company has already made a sale, but the cash will be earned after a week. So the moment it makes a sale, it will record it, and it will record it as a credit sale, indicating that the money has still not been received. Okay, and it will create what is called a debtor, which is the legal term to denote any customer to whom a sale has been made, but he or she has not paid you yet. Okay. Then we have the matching concept, that is associating the cause and effect relationship of revenues and expenses. If you're looking at revenues for a year, then you must match it with expenses for a year. You cannot include expenses for 11 months or 13 months. Okay, the period should be matched. If I'm using revenues for a year, then for the same year, the expenses will also be used. So for example, I have got sales for the entire year, but when I'm making my P&L, I still haven't paid salary for the last month. So I'm making my P&L in March, but I will pay the salary for March in April. Okay, but at March closing, that salary has already occurred. Okay, so I will match that salary with that year's revenue and show it in the books of the account. Right? So the accrual concept, which is similar to the matching concept, says that the period should be decided on the basis of accrual. When the transaction is already occurred, you will record it. Okay, and the dual aspect concept says that the two aspects must be examined, the giving and the receiving. Nearly 200 years ago, we didn't have the double entry concept. We had the single entry concept, which basically meant that you would only make entries where it affected you. So if the company is paying something, you would just say that I have paid this much. You would not taken the second aspect. Who have I paid it to? If money is coming in, then who is it coming from? Okay. And that naturally led to a lot of fraud and a lot of confusion because the complete transaction was never known. But now क्या 200 साल से the dual aspect concept says that both aspects, who is giving and who is receiving, and vice versa, has to be included in each person's books. तो जो दे रहा है उसके भी उसमें डबल कॉन्सेप्ट होएगा और जो ले रहा है या जिसको मिल रहा है उसके भी बुक्स में दोनों एस्पेक्ट्स रिकॉर्ड होंगे, so that there is absolute clarity on where the money is going and who is receiving it. Okay, any doubts, any questions, please ask. So there are these 9 concepts which are universal across the world. Any doubts, any questions, please ask. Samriddhi, is it okay? Do you see any doubts or questions? Okay, so generally at this time, I find students having a lot of questions and a lot of things are going on in their minds. कि मैम ऐसे transaction होगा तो उसमें क्या करेंगे उसमें क्या करेंगे, but I can see that none of you have such doubts. So either you have understood everything, or you just don't care, or you've not understood anything but you're not willing to ask questions. So please not ask questions at your own peril, okay? Because if you are sitting with some concept that is not clear and if you don't ask questions, then you will carry on with that concept. Okay, so that will be to your own peril. So please ask if you have any doubts or questions.
Ma'am, there's just one question I wanted to ask actually.
Yes, please ask. मतलब इतना हमको बेग मत करने दो. तुम लोग को कोई भी डाउट हो, कोई भी क्वेश्चन हो, लाइव सेशन का यही मतलब होता है that you can clarify them. Otherwise, so I can just share all the material and assume that you have read it and you have understood everything. हाँ बताओ अक्षर.
Ma'am, so how would I record?
Akshat, you have done MSL 307 also, na?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, very good. हाँ बताओ अक्षर.
Ma'am, how would I record a transaction? For example, let's say it's October already and I'm paying rent for 5 months straight. So how will the person who I am paying the rent will record this expense, since it's also going into the next financial year? And as an, I mean, when I'm considering, I mean, when he'll be doing a financial year, the thing, so how will he manage this cost? Will he divide it, or will it be taken into credit, or what will happen?
Okay, so when you are paying your rent in October for the next 5 months, right? So it is basically
Yes,
you're paying your rent. Paying your rent in advance. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So today, when you are paying that rent, whatever amount you're paying, that much of cash is going out of the business. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So you will say that my rent expense. So when you're recording it for that particular year, you will divide that rent for that particular year. That is for whatever you're making that P&L. So suppose you make your P&L in December end, which is your financial year end, because you're a US company. Okay. So for that, when you close your accounts in December, then you will utilize this October, November, December 3 months rent for that period. Okay, for the matching principle. But the 2 months extra rent that you have paid for January and February of next year, that would be recorded as a prepaid expense or prepaid rent. and shown as a asset in your balance sheet. Remember, I had told you that in assets we have all prepaid expenses. So similarly, when you show a liability, it is something that you owe, and when you show an asset, it is something that someone else owes to you. So in prepaid expenses, the landlord still owes the 2 months service to you for the rent that you have paid. Okay, so we will show it as an asset. Now today, if I am recording the transaction in October, when the transaction is occurring, I will record it as 5 months prepaid today, because it is just October. As and when the day goes by and I'm closing my books in December, only then will I record these 3 months that I have already paid as the rent expense for that year when I'm making my P&L. You understand, Akshar? So today when I'm making the payment, I'm paying cash for 5 months. So it will immediately go into the balance sheet. My cash will reduce by that much amount, and I will create prepaid rent as an asset for that much amount, showing that I have today prepaid rent for the next 5 months. But in December end, when I will make my entire P&L account and I will club all my expenses together, all my revenues together, then in rent, I will take 3 months of this rent as my rent cost for that year. Okay, Akshar?
Okay.
तो P&L
So,
तो
ma'am, the
रूप होके
remaining
बनता
two.
है.
So,
हाँ.
ma'am, the money that I've paid for the remaining 2 months, will that be shown in the P&L?
No, in the P&L it will not be shown, but in your balance sheet it will be shown as a prepaid rent for 2 months on 31st of December when your balance sheet figure is shown. Okay, so
Okay.
then you
Okay.
will know when you look at your balance sheet on 31st that okay, 3 महीने का जो रेंट था वो तो कंपनी ने absorb कर लिया for these 3 months, but these 2 months are still remaining and they are for the next year. Okay, in
Sure, ma'am.
P&L you will only show the matching concept, that is उस साल का 1st of Jan से 31st of दिसंबर तक का जितना रेवेन्यू था एंड 1st of Jan से 31st of December तक का जितना एक्सपेंस था.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay,
Okay.
Akshar?
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay. All the best. All the best. Thanks. Anyone else who
Ma'am,
has a doubt? Yes, Divya.
so you said that there is this dual aspect that you have to record who's giving the money and to whom. But like, suppose we go to, like, when we shop for things in local markets and etc. So whenever the person they draft a bill, they do not really, not always do they record the person who's purchasing this item. So it's not always like your identity is not always recorded. So like, where is this like, where does this dual concept extend, and where is it valid and where is it not valid?
So Divya, this kind of an example that you're citing, typically it happens in a kirana store where no proper billing is done.
Yeah,
Right.
actually,
So
even where
see,
there like people are drafting bills, but I have seen that like, yeah, I've seen there are proper drafted printed bills, but not always do they record the name. Like they will record the amount, etc., date, etc., but not always do they record the name of the person, the mobile number, or whatever.
so this is typically done in FMCG companies where they are selling you fast moving consumer goods. So suppose you're going to a store where you're buying your grocery items like Big Bazaar and all, or you are going to a clothes store where you're buying a couple of t-shirts or something like that. So these could be areas where you have fast moving consumer goods, where it actually doesn't matter because thousands of people are coming and buying their products and services. As long as you're paying cash for that, it is not, these companies are not very proper in recording the names, but you will find a lot of very professional stores who will record your phone number, who will record your name, and who will print that on bills, and you will get SMSs which will show the transaction having happened. In fact, they also give you membership cards. So if you see the more professional stores, they do that. Okay, so if you go to any professional store like Lifestyle or Zara, they would have this kind of a thing. Now there are a whole lot of I won't say fraudulent, but for example sole proprietor concerns like kirana stores and all, who never bother to give you a bill, who will tell you इतना पैसा हुआ है आप इतना पैसा दे दो और वो चले जाते हैं. Okay, so what they are doing is they are just recording the daily income that they are making, and they are charged as per their personal income tax slab. So it doesn't really matter, जितना वो income दिखाएंगे उतना उस पे उनको tax देना पड़ता है. Okay, and now so there was a lot of fraud that used to happen because there was no record. So suppose I'm making a sale of 1,000 rupees, but I'm entering only 500 as my sale for that day, and I'm putting that 500 cash away. Then I was not recording it. Okay, and that is why all this demonetization and all happened, to basically try and get back all this black money. Okay, so that happens. And as I told you, in our economy, there's a parallel economy running on this black money where people are not recording transactions so that they don't have to pay taxes on it. But 95% of business transactions are B2B transactions, business to business transactions, where each business is a separate legal entity. Okay, and in that, in fact, even for normal transactions now, you can only have 20,000 rupees worth of cash transactions that can happen. Anything above that has to be done electronically, okay, through a bank transfer. So this is another government intervention to ensure that any sizable transaction that happens, it happens with complete recording. Okay, and it is entered into the either the bank statement or your whatever you're using, Paytm or whatever, so that it gets recorded. In fact, demonetization and the subsequent coming up of these mobile wallets was also another government intervention to ensure that each transaction gets recorded. Who did you pay to? Who paid? Okay, everything gets recorded. But you're absolutely right, Divya. In the small shops across the country, there are still unrecorded transactions happening. Okay, and that is why. But the government is not too worried about these, because the income that these small shops and all make is not too much to worry the government. But imagine a large company, if it were doing this, then imagine the amount of tax evasion that would happen. But also, if you go to a large mobile or electronic store, I wonder if you've ever gone to Gafar Market or Palika Bazaar or even Nehru Place for that matter, and you buy a high ticket item, like you buy a laptop or a printer, which is a high value item, there you will find some fraudulent shop owners who will ask you, मैडम बिल के संग दें कि बिना बिल के दें? अगर बिल के संग लीजिएगा तो उसमें जीएसटी भी लग जाएगा, तो 20% ज्यादा हो जाएगा. बिल के बिना लीजिएगा तो आपको इतना कम मिलेगा. And I'm sorry to say that a lot of Indians agree to that, कि नहीं नहीं हमें पैसा बचाना है, आप बिना बिल के दे दीजिए. And they are okay. बिना बिल के ना उनको वारंटी मिलेगी, ना आफ्टर सेल सर्विस मिलेगी, कुछ नहीं मिलेगा. But because they have saved money, they will say कि हाँ हाँ बिल मत दीजिए, so that there is no record of the transaction. So such spurious, fraudulent practices happen in our country, and it is pretty rampant. But by law, every sale that you make, you are supposed to record who you are selling it to by raising a bill. And if you see bill में नाम होता है कि किसको आपने दिया है, कौन customer, you record that. चाहे वो 1 रुपए का सामान हो, चाहे वो 1 लाख का सामान हो. Okay, but smaller उसके लिए the government is also not very finicky, and neither are shop owners very finicky. In fact, we as customers also don't demand a bill. वरना आप अगर बिल डिमांड करिएगा तो आपको हर शॉप को आपको बिल देना है by law. But we also don't worry about it. I remember a day I asked, from Gupta stores, I said, bill दीजिए. तो बोले बिल देना पड़ेगा मैम. अच्छा अच्छा रुकिए हम बनाते हैं. Then from the end he took out his bill book and there he made a bill, because they are never in the practice of making a bill and giving it to anyone. But it is our right as customers to get a bill for whatever purchase we make, and then the company will be forced to record that transaction, Divya. But the government को भी पता है कि they cannot keep, policing each and every citizen. So what they do is they understand 95% of the revenues come from business to business transaction. So each business being a separate legal entity, you will know that they will have their own bank account, their own GST number and PAN and everything. So every transaction that they will make will be a high ticket transaction, and that will get captured, because anyway you cannot have cash transactions for more than 20,000. So most of the bulk of the transactions in the economy do get recorded. and that is what the government is then able to levy taxes on. So the government has a complete idea कि इस इनके अकाउंट में ये पैसे आ रहे हैं. ठीक है दिव्या?
Yeah, ma'am.
Okay, but yes, you're right, there are a whole lot of fraudulent practices happening in our country as well. Okay, any other doubts, any other questions? Okay, so I'm
मैम
coming. Yes, Abhinav.
मैम ये जो किराना की दुकानें होती हैं, छोटी दुकानें होती हैं, तो ये रजिस्टर्ड भी होती हैं?
हाँ, तो ये सोल प्रोप्राइटर की तरह रजिस्टर्ड होती हैं. ये बेसिकली क्या होता है, कंपनीज एक्ट के ही अंतर्गत दे आर रजिस्टर्ड एज सोल प्रोप्राइटरशिप, दैट इज वन ओनर, एंड देयर इनकम टैक्स रेट्स आर एप्लीकेबल एज पर द पर्सनल इनकम टैक्स जो लेवी होता है ऑन दैट शॉप ओनर. सो सपोज इट्स अ वेरी स्मॉल शॉप एंड दे आर फॉलोइंग इनसाइड दैट 5 लाख ब्रैकेट, जो भी टैक्स स्लैब्स हैं, तो उसी हिसाब से दे पे टैक्स. Yes, they are registered, Abhinav.
ओके मैम.
Okay, but yes, as you are saying, बहुत सारे shops वगैरह ऐसी होती हैं जो कि बेनामी होती हैं या registered नहीं होती हैं, जिनका कोई नाम नहीं होता है लॉज में, एंड यही छोटे छोटे जैसे जो ठेला लगा के सब्जी बेच रहा है या फल बेच रहा है, वो कहाँ रजिस्टर्ड होता है? उसका कौन सा ऑफिस एड्रेस होता है? वो कौन सा टैक्स पे कर रहा होता है? कुछ नहीं हो रहा होता है. बट अगेन, because they are poor people, because they would be making very little money, neither is the government interested in them, nor is anyone bothered about them, as long as they are making their own money and they're earning. Okay, so we have so many hawkers you see in railway stations, or on bus stands, or around you in your societies, who are neither registered nor do they have any kind of role to play in the taxes of the country. ओके, बट इनका क्योंकि कुछ पैसा इन लोग बहुत ही कम कमाते हैं, ना इन लोग रजिस्टर्ड होते हैं, तो इसलिए कोई इनके लिए बॉदर भी नहीं करता है. समझ गया बिना? Here we are only tasked with, or we are talking about professional enterprises who are desirous of taking money from the public, and that is where it becomes very important for them to follow all the legal stipulations, because the vast population of our country's money is at stake. The public money is at stake. So there the government regulations and all become very stringent, because कोई भी कंपनी अगर स्टॉक एक्सचेंज तक पहुंच गई है, so it has access to the entire population of our country. In fact, it can access the rest of the world's capital also. तो वहां पे the government needs to be very careful. Okay, Abhinav?
यस मैम. मैम जो स्टार्टअप्स होते हैं, तो ऐसा भी है कुछ कि उनको पहले 3 साल तक उनको टैक्स नहीं देना होता है?
It depends on which sector they are in. So government, to encourage certain sectors, provides tax holidays to certain startups. तो जैसे IT सेक्टर को गवर्नमेंट जब प्रमोट कर रही थी, तो IT बेस्ड जो डीप टेक स्टार्टअप्स होते हैं, उनको पिछले पहले 3 साल या 5 साल they are not supposed to pay any taxes. Then the government also sets up SEZs, which are special economic zones, basically to develop certain areas as industrial hubs. तो वहां पर भी गवर्नमेंट इंसेंटिव देने के लिए कि लोग वहां पे जाके अपनी कंपनी सेटअप करें, द गवर्नमेंट सेज दैट इफ यू आर हियर इन दिस SEZ, देन वी विल नॉट टैक्स यू फॉर द नेक्स्ट 3 years or 5 years as a tax holiday. So the government keeps coming up with these schemes to basically develop certain areas, or to give an impetus to more startups in a particular area जहां गवर्नमेंट फोकस चाहती है. तो जैसे अभी रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी सेक्टर के स्टार्टअप्स को गवर्नमेंट ने टैक्स हॉलिडे दिया हुआ है. Okay, so these policies keep changing from time to time depending on where the focus of the government is, and every year in the budget the government declares it. Okay, Abhinav?
यस मैम.
तो इसीलिए हम कहते हैं कि whenever you decide to have your own startup, you must be in touch with a CA, a practicing CA or a practicing corporate lawyer, to understand what is the current legal environment around that sector, and what are the incentives that the government is ready to give, so that you are able to then understand the political, legal setup around your idea, and you can make the most of it. Okay, otherwise you will know your product very well, but you will not know what is the government doing for it, or what is the legal stipulation, and then you can find yourself in trouble. Okay, because no citizen can take ignorance of the law as an excuse कि सॉरी हमको तो पता ही नहीं था कि बिना बिल के सामान नहीं देना चाहिए, सॉरी, ऐसे you can't do that. और सॉरी हमें तो पता ही नहीं था कि मर्डर नहीं करना चाहिए इसलिए हमने कर दिया. You can't quote ignorance of the law as an excuse. So it is always good to take legal advice, to take a practicing chartered accountant's advice and follow whatever rules and regulations you have to do so that you can continue to do your processes in peace and you're not in for a rude shock कि रेड हो गई या जेल चले गए and all that. Okay, Abhinav?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, fine. Any other doubts, any other questions?
Ma'am, you said about Nehru market.
Sukhdev, is this you?
Yes, ma'am.
हाँ, Sukhdev, your voice is breaking up. Can you repeat yourself?
And you given the example of Nehru place market that the shopkeeper doesn't go bill.
Sukhdev, I can't hear you very well. Sukhdev, can you please speak up?
Let me change my mic.
Either you can change your mic or you can even type in the chat box because I'm not able to clearly understand what you're saying. So, BTech students, my
Ma'am,
request
you
to you.
given the example of Nehru market that the shopkeeper.
Nehru place. हाँ, Sukhdev. हाँ.
How does this help the shopkeeper? I mean, distributor has paid the GST already, so I don't get this.
I'm sorry. ये आपने मतलब एक एग्जाम्पल हमें दो अपना क्वेश्चन बताने के लिए. एक एग्जाम्पल दो हमें सुखदेव अपना क्वेश्चन समझाने के लिए. आप क्या कह रहे हो, डिस्ट्रीब्यूटर ने जीएसटी दे दी तो किसको क्या फायदा हो रहा है?
He's asking how does the shopkeeper benefit from this, like not giving the bill because he thinks that the GST has been paid by the distributor. So like the shopkeeper will not have to pay the GST.
तो शॉपकीपर को अपना तो इनकम टैक्स देना ही पड़ेगा ना सुखदेव. अगर आपका जीएसटी सपोज आपके डिस्ट्रीब्यूटर ने जिसने आपको सामान दिया है उसने दे दिया है तो वो सामान जो आपने डिस्ट्रीब्यूटर से लिया वो आपका कॉस्ट है सुखदेव. When you are selling it off, you are selling it off at retail price, so you are making money out of it, right? So when you are earning, you have to pay income tax as your own shop or your own business. So by not making a bill, you are evading that tax. Sukhdev, you are showing that that sale never happened. Sukhdev, can you hear me? Is he here? I think he has left the class. Okay. So I think he's logged off because of some problems with his audio. Fine. So Samriddhi, just let me know when Sukhdev comes back so that I can tell him. But I hope that the rest of the class is clear about this. If your previous supply chain partner has paid his or her taxes, he or she has done the legal thing that was required. But you as a separate business entity, as a shop or whatever, you also have to pay taxes on your income, right? By not giving a bill for any transaction, you're basically trying to evade tax by showing that that sale never happened. Okay, so that is also fraud. Okay, Divya, have you understood? And Sukhdev, whenever he joins, you all can
He's
explain.
here in the meeting only.
Sukhdev, are you here?
Yes, ma'am. I just
So
joined back.
Sukhdev, did you hear what I said?
Last part I heard that the last entity has paid the tax, but not the final.
हाँ, तो जो जिस दुकान से आप सामान ले रहे हो उनको भी तो अपना टैक्स देना है ना. ये थोड़ी कि हमारी सप्लाई चेन 10 लोगों की उसमें से एक ने टैक्स दे दिया तो बाकी 9 लोग जो है वो मजे से रहेंगे बिना टैक्स दिए. ऐसे थोड़ी होता है. ओके सुखदेव?
Yes, ma'am.
ओके फाइन.
Yes.
Okay, great. Any other doubts? Any other questions? हमने ये देखा है कि हमारे बीटेक स्टूडेंट्स इतने स्मार्ट होते हैं कि उन लोग हमेशा ये कोशिश करते हैं कि किस तरह से मैम हम लोग लॉ को जैसे मैनिपुलेट करके वो कर सकते हैं. मतलब हमेशा हमसे ये क्वेश्चन हर क्लास में क्वेश्चंस पूछते हैं कि कैसे इस चीज से हम लोग बच सकते हैं, कैसे हम लोग इवेड कर सकते हैं. अरे अपनी जो इंटेलिजेंस है वो अच्छे से कमाने में लगाओ ताकि आप और टैक्स दो देश की डेवलपमेंट के लिए. हमेशा गलत चीज सोचने की क्या जरूरत है. ओके, so coming back, that was on a lighter note. Fine. So we have done with all the 9 concepts. Now these are the accounting conventions or practices. Okay. So first is the convention of consistency. Whenever you adopt a method to value anything, you must follow it. So for example, if I'm using depreciation, then whatever method of depreciation I'm using, I should consistently keep following it so that people who are following my accounts from year to year have no problem in understanding. We shouldn't keep changing our consistency so that people are confused. But sometimes companies may need to change their conventions. So whenever you're doing that, you must clearly specify it in your balance sheet or P&L that we have changed the practice of calculating depreciation. The reason is this. Now, if you look at our depreciation values, they will be like this. Earlier, they used to be calculated this way. The difference would be this much, and you must completely explain the change so that people know why you have done this. But you must try and be consistent for as long as possible. Second is disclosure. All relevant facts concerning financial position must be communicated to users. ये आप नहीं कह सकते कि अरे वो वाले को तो हमने बिल ही नहीं दिया था तो हमने सोचा उसको बताने की क्या जरूरत है कि वो सेल हो गई है. Everything that has a financial bearing, चाहे वो 1 रुपए का ट्रांजैक्शन हो, it should be recorded, it should be communicated to users. बट नेचुरली यूजर्स ऑल्सो अंडरस्टैंड कि अगर हम हर एक रुपए का 5 रुपए का ट्रांजैक्शन रिकॉर्ड करते रहेंगे तो हमारा पीएनएल बनाने में ही 1000 पेजेस लग जाएंगे. सो व्हाट कंपनीज डू इज दिस काइंड ऑफ स्मॉल मिसलेनियस एक्सपेंसेस जिनका कोई बहुत मेजर बेयरिंग नहीं है ऑन द बिजनेस बट दे आर एक्सपेंसेस, उनको आप एक हेड में डाल देते हो कॉल्ड मिसलेनियस एक्सपेंसेस या ऑफिस एक्सपेंसेस, ऐसे करके उसमें क्लब कर देते हो कि भाई दिवाली पे द कुरियर गाय केम एंड द कंपनी एक्सेप्टेड अ कुरियर एंड ही सेड सर दिवाली की बख्शीश दे दीजिए, तो उनको आपने 100 रुपए दे दिया. ओके, so you don't have to record all this because it has no major financial bearing on the company. So you can club all of these small office expenses into miscellaneous expenses and you can record it. Okay, but it should be disclosed. Then materiality, that is, it should be concerned with significant information. So again, it is similar to disclosure that whatever is material information, for example, what is your sales, that is material information. What are your costs, that is very material information. Interest आपने कितना पे किया, taxes आपके कितने बन रहे हैं, ये बहुत ही important material information है, बहुत ही significant है because इसके ऊपर government will levy taxes on you. Based on this, people will do business with you. Okay, based on the suppliers will supply material to you. So you have to be very careful that all material information should be very carefully recorded. Okay. Then objectivity. Every transaction that happens should be just recorded as that. It should be unbiased, unemotional. Anyone can verify it. Okay. For example, the company has made sales. बट यू फील दैट बड़ी कम सेल्स है, हमारे हिसाब से तो ज्यादा होनी चाहिए थी, और ठीक है हमें लगता है 2 दिन में और ज्यादा हो जाएगी तो हम आज ही उसको रिकॉर्ड कर लेते हैं. नहीं, you cannot base your optimism or your pessimism in your recording. Recording will be objective. जो है वो है बस. Okay, and उसका proof होना चाहिए that that transaction has happened. Now by law, every transaction that happens has to have a physical proof. तो जो बिल है वो एक physical proof होता है किसी भी transaction का. तो कायदे से कोई भी प्रोफेशनल एंटरप्राइज होगी वो हर चीज के लिए एक वाउचर क्रिएट करेगी और उस वाउचर को होल्ड करेगी ताकि एट द एंड ऑफ द ईयर व्हेन द बुक्स आर ऑडिटेड बाय अ चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट और अ थर्ड पार्टी, इफ दे एवर वांट टू सी कि ओके आपने यहाँ पे लिखा है कि 1000 रुपए का आपने फर्नीचर खरीदा था, इसका वाउचर का है, तो आप वो वाउचर निकाल के उनको दिखा दो कि देखिए उस दिन का वाउचर है, हमने ये फर्नीचर खरीदा था. ओके, सो यू शुड हैव द प्रूफ that can be used as verification by an external expert. So for example, when we were talking about Satyam's case in the last class, I told you that Raju kept saying that they had 6,000 crores in their bank account. But the auditors, PricewaterhouseCoopers, they never even bothered to verify it. All you needed to verify it was to tell Raju that can I have your passbook? In the passbook you could have seen the total, or they could have just picked up the phone and called the bank and said that does Satyam have an account with you, what is the current cash balance. It is as simple as that. Okay. Then the fifth convention is a stable monetary unit. So in India, the stable monetary unit is the Indian rupee. For US, it's the dollar. For Europe, it's the euro. Okay, basically we try and look at a currency which is stable, which does not fluctuate readily. So in a lot of countries where there's war going on or civil unrest, अभी आप लोग देख ही रहे हैं अफगानिस्तान का क्या हाल हो रहा है. No company there would want to make their accounts in the domestic currency, because वो domestic currencies इतना heavily fluctuate करेंगी कि कोई no one will be able to understand what the P&L or balance sheet is trying to convey. So you always try and look at a stable monetary unit. So what these countries do where there is a lot of unrest, or where their monetary unit, domestic monetary unit, is very volatile, they try and make their balance sheet and P&L in dollar terms or in euro terms or in pound terms, so that there is some stability associated with the currency. Then the sixth convention is conservatism or prudence. When in doubt, choose the solution that is least likely to overstate net assets and net income for the current period. कभी भी आपको अगर डाउट है कि भाई हम ज्यादा सेल्स कर पाएंगे कि कम, always opt for the more conservative thing, so that whenever you actually make more sales, people are in for a happy surprise and you're not building or inflating anything up. So be very conservative, be very prudent. Suppose you have made sales on credit to some people, some customers, and you have a feeling that some of these customers may not pay up. So then these such kind of cases are called bad debts. Okay, bad debts is when your customers who you have sold products on credit to, they don't pay back. Okay, so if you think that there is a chance that some people may not pay back, you can create a provision for bad debts and you can treat that as a loss when you're making your P&L. Okay, so accounting practices allow you to do that. Okay. Then accounting bases and policies. Accounting bases are the methods which have been deployed for applying fundamental accounting concepts to financial transactions. For example, depreciation. कौन सा base आप use कर रहे हैं inventory के लिए? There are various ways to value inventory, LIFO, FIFO, just in time. तो आप कौन सा use कर रहे हैं base? वो you must declare and you must do your calculations based on that. And policies are the specific accounting basis selected and consistently followed by a business enterprise. So suppose a new accountant joins, then you give him a document stating accounting policies जिसमें सारे bases लिखे कि भाई हम लोग depreciation ऐसे calculate करते हैं, हम लोग inventory ऐसे calculate करते हैं, और इसी तरह आप calculate कर करके उसको डालिए. Okay, so that is just the accounting policy that you're using in your company. Okay. Now, some very important terminology that we use. So this is the syntax. Okay, when I say asset, it will mean only that. It can't be used loosely. So assets are the economic resources which are owned by a company and are expected to benefit future operations. Assets may have definite physical form such as building, machinery or merchandise, or it can be intangible like patents, intellectual property, technology, and so on. Okay, but these assets are what are owned by the business. They are the resources that the business has created to make its product or service. Okay. Liabilities, on the other hand, as I have told you, are the debts owed by a business to outside parties. This includes amount owed to suppliers for goods or services purchased, amount borrowed from banks or other lenders, salaries and taxes due but not paid. Okay, so what the company does is it treats the word liability as all its outsider people, and it treats the equity share capital that has come to it as internal liability because they are its owners. But eventually, even the share capital that has come to you as a company is also a liability, because eventually you owe it back to your owners. Okay. The term net worth, and this is a very, very important term. If you've heard of Warren Buffett, the greatest investor of all times, he looks at the net worth of a business when he is deciding on his investment choices. The term net worth, proprietorship, owner's investment, or capital all have the same meaning in accounting, namely the owner's equity or the interest in the assets of the business. It is the difference between what the business owns and what it owes to outside liabilities. Basically, we are looking at the actual ownership value of that business. Okay, after we have paid off all the outside liabilities. Then revenue and expenses are items of the P&L. All revenue expenses go to the profit and loss account. All assets and liabilities go to the balance sheet. Revenues is the term that is used to define the inflow of cash resulting from the sale of goods and services in the ordinary course of business. Revenue causes an increase in capital. So suppose कोई cost ही नहीं होता तो सारा revenue आपका profit होता और वो आपके capital में add हो जाता. Expenses are defined as the cost of the goods and the services used up in the process of obtaining revenue. For example, cost of goods sold, wages and salaries, charges of newspaper, advertising, etc. जो भी खर्चा हुआ है, all of those are expenses. Now, the balance sheet is a classified summary of the balances of various accounts after the preparation of the trading and profit and loss account. Now, profit and loss account का complete नाम trading and profit and loss account है because 95% of businesses are basically trading businesses. They are not original equipment manufacturers. They are in the process of trade. So for trading concerns, a term that is used is trading profit and loss account. And for selling concerns, a term that is used is basically profit and loss account. It shows a financial position of a business at a particular moment in time. So it is made on a particular day. Okay, in fact, there is a time that is mandated when companies record the balance sheet for that particular day. In banks, it is 2 p.m. तो जनरली इन लॉट ऑफ बैंक्स यू विल फाइंड कि वो बोलेंगे कि अब हमारे कैश ट्रांजैक्शंस नहीं होंगे 2 बजे के बाद क्योंकि हमें अपनी बुक्स बंद करनी है, उस दिन की बैलेंस शीट उनको रेडी करनी है. ठीक है. It is a snapshot of the financial condition of the business and hence it is also known as a mirror of the business. कायदे से people who understand accounting only need to look at that one page balance sheet to understand the financial position of the company. Okay. So this is called the balance sheet equation. Very important. Assets of your business that the company owns will always be equal to liabilities plus capital. Now here, liabilities denote the liabilities of outsiders. For example, loan providers, workers who have to be given salary, taxes and so on. And capital denotes your owner's liability or the share capital. Okay. Basically, if you see, both liabilities and capital are liability for the business only, but it is used to differentiate between what is your owner's money and what is the money that you owe to outsiders. Okay, so capital is nothing but assets minus all your external liabilities, and this formula is also used to calculate the net worth of your business. So what are the features of a balance sheet? It's the statement of a financial position. It is prepared on a given date. In balance sheet, your total assets will always equal total liabilities because company का अपना एक पैसा नहीं होता कि वो इधर से हटा ले. Assets are listed on the right side of the balance sheet and liabilities are listed on the left side. Now, however, we have the vertical form of balance sheet where liabilities are listed before assets. Now, the way in which you present your balance sheet and all is called marshalling. Okay, that is also an accounting convention. Now, in India, after the new Companies Act of 2013, the way we marshaled our balance sheet has changed. Initially, we used to have horizontal balance sheets where on the left side used to show all the liabilities and on the right side used to show all the assets. But now we have a vertical format where first we show all the liabilities and then below that we show all the assets. In the US, the way to marshal is the opposite. They also follow a vertical format, but they show assets first and then below that they show the liabilities. Okay, so every country has its own way of marshalling. The objective of preparing a balance sheet is to disclose the financial condition of a business and to examine the worth of a company and the profitability of the company. Principles to be observed in preparing a balance sheet. The first principle to be observed in the preparation of a balance sheet is that balance of similar significance should be grouped together and that the balances of dissimilar significance should be stated under separate heads. So for example, just as we create ledgers, everything that is similar should be grouped together. So plant and machinery can be grouped together. All buildings can be grouped together into one head called building. All sundry debtors can be a group of all the debtors that you have created when you made a sale. Okay, land and building can be grouped in a same group. So you should always see, because it has to be made in one page, you can group similar items together. The second principle of accounting relates to marshalling, which I just told you. The assets and liabilities should be arranged in a specific order. Okay, this arrangement is called marshalling, and there are three methods for marshalling. The first method is to arrange the assets according to their availability to pay off the liabilities. That is, those assets which are represented by cash or which can be easily convertible into cash would take the first place, while those which are not immediately available for the payment of liability will take the second place. So in the beginning, you will show current assets, and then below that you will show your long-term assets or fixed assets. This is how the US marshals it. In India, the opposite is there. We show long-term assets and then we show current assets. So it's basically how you present it. Okay, otherwise everything else remains the same. The second method of arranging the items is almost the reverse. Immovable property or absolutely long-term assets should be taken first. Movable assets like inventory and all should be taken on second place, and liquid assets like cash and bank balance should be taken on third place. So this is how India does it. The third method is a mix of first and second method. Assets are arranged in the first method and liabilities are arranged in the second method. So you can have a mix, but whatever method you choose, that should be consistent, so that through the years, if people are looking at your balance sheets and income statements, they know that इस point पे ये चीज लिखी होगी. You know, they become so familiar with the presentation of your books of the accounts, so that they know कि okay, नीचे कोने में ये चीज लिखा होगा. Okay, that should be the level of consistency, so that your reader is most comfortable with whatever information is being shared. Profit and loss account, on the other hand, you see the word account. It is an account of transactions for a certain period. It is not made on a day. It is for a period. Okay, it is prepared to know the final result of the business. It includes only revenue receipts and revenue expenses. All the business sales that you are making and all the business expenses that you're making are all included in the profit and loss account. And it will be made for a period of 1 year, 1 quarter, 6 months, whatever it is. Balance sheet is just a statement. It is just showing a snapshot of the financial position of the business. It is made on a particular day. Naturally, if today the balance sheet is something, tomorrow it will change. Okay, it includes only assets and liabilities, no expense, no revenue, nothing. Profit and loss account prepared for a particular period. The left side of the account is known as debit side and the right side is known as credit side. Since you will not be making, journal entries and ledger entries and all, we are not teaching you financial accounting from the beginning. So you don't have to worry about this debit credit side. Okay, you will just see how we make it. But you know that the left side is called the debit side and the right side is called a credit side. Okay, but don't worry about where it came from. The balance sheet is prepared on a particular date. Typically, when we created the horizontal balance sheet before 2013, in India, we had liabilities on the left side and assets on the right side. In the US, we had assets on the left side and liabilities on the right side. But now after 2013, we have the vertical format where we first show all the liabilities and then below that we show all the assets. Okay, so these are the basic formats of how we make P&L and balance sheets. Okay, now we will look at how we make P&L and balance sheets through a couple of examples. The detailed material is there, so I will just do a couple of examples with you and I would expect you to learn the rest, and then we will move on to how we prepare P&L and balance sheet for a startup, because that is what our main focus is. Okay, now I keep telling my HOD also, and she agrees with me, entire IIT is going to undergo a curriculum review. And I feel that all entrepreneurs, the way the minor in entrepreneurship is structured, it is very haphazard. Every entrepreneur should know how to make balance sheet P&L in the beginning. This should not be an elective. Basically what we are doing is we are reinventing the wheel. In the beginning we have done business plans and everything and projections, and then after that as an elective we are learning how to make those projections. So this is completely haphazard. Hopefully when we do a curriculum review of the minor in entrepreneurship, we will have core courses on finance, core courses on strategy, on operations, on market research, so that entrepreneurs know all of these cores, and then they can prepare proper business plans and all. So till that happens, we have this haphazard thing, and that is why I was telling you that people who have done MSL 307 will find a lot of repetition with this course. Okay, but you have to bear with us because that is how the current structure is, and unfortunately what we should be teaching as a core skill is coming as an elective. Okay, so that is the thing. Now I would like to stop here because I think there are only 2 minutes left. I don't want to begin something new right now, but I would like to take any doubts, any questions that you may have. Please tell me. Also, another announcement I wanted to make, this Friday is a holiday for Muharram, and Saturday is going to be functioning as Friday's timetable. So we'll have a class on Saturday from 3:30 to 5. Right, Samriddhi?
Yes, ma'am.
So I hope all of you know. Yes, Dinesh, do you have a question?
Ma'am, where have you uploaded the material you were talking about?
So Dinesh, when you go to your Teams, in that there's a section called Files. When you click on that, you will see all this material. And you can download it onto
Ma'am,
your
I
own
have
laptop. Yes.
added the course in the AirDrop window, so I have not been added in the Teams.
Oh, how come you are attending the class then if you have not added in the Teams?
Ma'am, so the thing
I
is,
got the link on the email.
ma'am, there is an ongoing confusion going on because there are two teams now. Because we had created one team and there was one team that was automatically created by the IT department. So they are
Okay.
being added to those to that team which has been created by the IT department.
Oh, acha, acha. Okay, so Dinesh, what you can do in the meanwhile, this problem will carry on for a few days till 20th when we have the final list, and Samriddhi will update this. But Samriddhi, can you add Dinesh separately?
Yes, ma'am. I have added few students yesterday. I will add him
Okay.
also.
So Dinesh, if you can, how does Dinesh get in touch with you? Through Abhinav?
Yes, ma'am. Or all the
Dinesh,
students who are facing this problem, they can like just write it in that WhatsApp group that we have created for 405.
okay. So Dinesh, just get yourself added to the WhatsApp group that has been created and put in the details there so that Samriddhi can add to you. Okay, because there's a lot of confusion during this ad drop phase that is going on.
Okay, ma'am.
Dinesh,
And
okay.
ma'am, are the previous lectures uploaded in the Teams?
Yes. And Samriddhi,
And the
in your WhatsApp group also on 20th when you have the final list, then you please ensure that only people who are actually then registered continue in that WhatsApp group.
Okay, ma'am, sure.
Yeah, I don't want people accessing the material who are not registered in the course. Dinesh,
Okay.
bolo.
Ma'am, where can I know about the course policy and everything? Because I have added it now, so I did not attend the first two
No,
lectures.
so Abhi Dinesh, when Samriddhi will add you in that main portal, na. So over there, I have also uploaded the course plan. So go through the course plan in detail. We have already discussed it in detail in the first class. And if you have any doubts, any questions, then you can come back. You can also discuss it with Abhinav, who's your CR. Okay, because I had
No.
requested Abhinav to come back with
Ma'am,
any feedback, but at that time there was no feedback from the students.
yes, ma'am, right now I am in a group named MSL 405, but I do not know that this is the group that you are talking about. I got the link in some other group.
So just get connected with Abhinav and Samriddhi and sort it out, because there are 2-3 groups that have been floating around, but the one that Samriddhi is created is the real one, because when Samriddhi created this group, the CSC department had sent us a empty link with no registered students. So she had to do it manually. Okay. So just get in touch with Samriddhi and she will help you.
Ma'am, how can I contact her?
By
Email or
getting
something?
yourself added. Abhinav, please add him to the WhatsApp group.
Okay, ma'am.
Abhinav is your CR. He will be your representative. Okay. Dinesh, get in touch with Abhinav Verma. Dinesh?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. But ma'am,
Okay.
how will I get in touch with him? I do not have his contact
चैट में लिख
information
दो
or
अपना
anything.
नंबर भाई, चैट में लिख दो दिनेश
Okay,
अपना
okay.
फोन नंबर, अभिनव का
Ma'am,
फोन नंबर ले लो.
ma'am, I cannot. Ma'am, I am not in the teams. That's why I am not allowed to write in the chat. There is no option of chat in my PC right now.
Dinesh, I will
अच्छा,
add you. I will
दिनेश
add.
अपना फोन नंबर बोल दो, अभिनव अपना
Okay.
फोन नंबर बोल दो यहाँ पे, तो सुन के लिख लेगा.
ये
Yes,
कुछ
लिंक
sure,
उसको
ma'am.
मैं
हेल्प कर दो किसी तरह. ठीक है, कैन यू गाइस फिगर इट आउट?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Yes, ma'am.
ma'am.
Okay, great. Any other doubts, any other questions? Fine. So I'll see all of you on Saturday. Please go through the material, especially people who have never studied finance before this. Please go through the material, because we would not be able to go through it in detail. वरना हम आप लोग को फाइनेंस पढ़ाते रहेंगे पूरा, फिर स्टार्टअप पे जाएंगे. हम आपको सिर्फ 1-2 एग्जांपल्स करा के सीधे स्टार्टअप पे जाएंगे, so that we can move for the startup application. Okay. So it's a tough task for me, but let's see how well I can do. I can do it with your support. So all the best, everyone. See you on Saturday then. Okay, bye-bye. Thanks, Samriddhi. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, ma'am.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Bye-bye.